AWS Well-Architected Framework Security Pillar. My name is Usman Ghani, and just want to introduce myself. As you know, name Usman Ghani. I'm working as a technology consultant in a multinational company, and my major responsibilities are leading the cloud strategies as an infrastructure as a service, platform as a service, or it is software as a service. So I am consulting for those companies and making the solutions that are going to transform from their on-premise to cloud, and specialty in the cloud like AWS, Microsoft Azure, and Google's GCP. So I have not only demonstrated hands-on on these platforms, and I am now working as a consultant, as I mentioned earlier, and I'm also have expertise in infrastructure and cyber security specialty. So let's move on to our agenda. First of all, introduction to well-architected framework. We will see that what is well-architected framework, how can this help to the clients and to the companies who are moving to cloud, and what are the necessary things that they have to keep in mind. So we will first check out what is well-architected framework, then we will move on to the security principles that every company should keep in mind, that if they are moving their on-premise infrastructure or from one cloud to another cloud, infrastructure, data, their information, assets. So what are the things that they have to keep in mind to secure their resources? Next, we will see if we are moving on the AWS cloud, what are the shared responsibility model that AWS is presenting, so that he is also contributing in the security of our resources, and as well as we will secure our resources like our data, our assets, services, and functions, managed services as well. So we will look at a chart, and that will show you an exact overview, the responsibilities that are shared among the clients and AWS. Next will be the security domains. We will go through IAM, identity access management, some detective controls, then infrastructure protection security techniques, then it will be data protection, and finally we will check at the incident reports. Actually, this one in the presentation, it was just like a white paper, or you can check it out on AWS. But to me, I'll try that we can go through some of the tools, and I will demonstrate some of the available tools in IAM category, detective controls, infrastructure protection, data protection, and as well as in incident response, so that you can get an idea that what we are talking about, and if we want to implement these things in our AWS cloud, how could it be possible. So let's move on. And what is well-architected framework? Obviously, this is not a physical or not a software. This is a guideline that will help you to understand the pros and cons of the decisions that you make while building systems on AWS. Obviously, there are many control factors when you are designing a complete solution for the transmission of your data center. I'm not discussing all these factors. We will just discuss the main that is also focus of our webinar, the security factor. So we can say that a well-architected framework is going to provide practices in design, delivery, and maintenance of secure AWS environment. And how Amazon built this framework? Amazon spent years working with thousands of comprehensive collection of best practices and guidance to known as obviously well-architected framework. So this is another thing that some other persons are sitting down and writing that what should be implemented and what shouldn't be implemented. So this is actually thousands of company, and finally they have come up with a framework. So what is this framework? This framework is comprised of multiple pillars. You can say that it is based on a security pillar, reliability, cost optimization, performance efficiency, and operations excellence. So whenever you are uh, building an infrastructure for your information, what you are looking for, first of all, I think the cost. What will be the cost of your infrastructure if you build it on premise? AWS in this pillar, obviously taking care of that feature that means there are different pillars, and obviously we will go a little bit deeper in the security pillar, that is our topic today, but a little bit information about that. AWS is also taking care of cost, reliability. When a person is building a data center or making available a device or resource or database or an EC2 instance like the server or storage, always there is a need for reliability. Is data should be available whenever they need that. Devices shouldn't be inaccessible, or there is any disaster, they might lose data. So these things are considered when you are building your data center. So Amazon in their on their side is providing multi availability zones, regions, also scalability features for their performance, removing the performance related issues. Means the, our instances or our services can automatically scale in and scale out as well, depending on the requests that are coming on the specific server or specific managed instance. So there are some factors, but what is in the security? When we are moving in the security, there are number of things that are going to be discussed, that identity and key management, encryption, security, and the monitoring and logging, and compliance and governance as well. So by using this well-architected framework where we are discussing all these 5 factors, what we can achieve, we can build and deploy our infrastructure in a faster way. We can mitigate technology risk before they happen and make better informed decisions as well. So these are some of the benefits that we can achieve if we consider our these framework while building our solutions. Okay, so next move on to security pillar. The security pillar obviously encompasses the ability to protect of our information, data, Data could be in our on the rest state or on the transit, our system, our services, and our assets, like if we are hosting some devices on our cloud infrastructure. So security pillar obviously will take care of all of these things. So what security principles are kept in mind when we are designing a security infrastructure? When we are moving to the security, so implementing a strong identity foundation will be the first step. What will do implementation of strong identity foundation? It will implement the principle of least privilege and enforce separation of duties with appropriate authorization for each interaction with your AWS resource, and also will provide you a centralized privilege management system, and almost reduce or eliminate reliance on long-term credentials. So I will demonstrate this thing as well. Means that we will create a security principle like user or group in our AWS infrastructure, and will assign the permissions and privileges so that only authorized person can access to our AWS infrastructure, and the privileges they have, just we are intending to do that user. So everything I will demonstrate once so that you can have a better idea. Next, we will enable traceability. Tracing is also an important thing that AWS should inform me, or I should be informed who sign into my AWS infrastructure and did some activities on my any resource. Everything should be logged. So traceability will help you to monitor, alert, and audit actions and changes to your environment in real time. And also we can integrate these logs and metrics with the system so that there could be an automated response. Means if someone is accessing my resource for a specific time period, or an attack like a brute force attack that is trying some passwords and want to access my resource, so an action will be triggered, like account will be signed out, or an email alert will be sent to me, and I can make a decision on the basis of that thing, or we can take the help of some tools or scripts that can take a predefined action. So traceability is second thing. Next is apply security at all layers. Before I'll explain this thing, let me show you this diagram. In this diagram, this is our AWS environment. You can see from here that if we start from Route 53, this is our DNS resolution. Obviously, Route 53 is a DNS service provided by AWS. Then here is a principal, security principal. We can say this one is a user. Obviously, to access the resources, there must be a user that have a user account credentials like username and password. And then we have a load balancer. In the load balancer, that CloudFront load balancer, and we have some EC2 instances that are hosting services like web services, or DSCP services, or our databases services, some managed instances, and relational databases are available on that one for reliability, and redundancy is also available there. We have database masters and also database read replicas. So this will be our infrastructure without any security. If we move on to the next level, okay, so you will find there are some changes in this diagram, and with the red labels we have security implementation. So to understand this thing, just let me move back onto the slide, and the point I was telling you, apply security at all layers. So if we divide our environment into layers, means that the outer layer, that is our routers, our Route 53, load balancers. Then we have also EC2 instances, we have storage, we have managed services, we have functions, we have other assets in this our infrastructure. So if there is a need to secure our environment, do not go for only one layer. That is mostly what we do. We just implement security on the outer layer and we feel that's great and then nothing will happen now. Actually, we have to implement security on each and every layer. So we have to apply a defense in-depth approach with the security controls. We have to implement security on our edge network. So any request that is coming into our environment should be verified and then should be allowed, just like a username and password is verified and then access is allowed to the environment. We have to protect our VPCs, we have to protect our subnets within that VPCs, and we also can implement a load balancer policies, and also we can use some security um, uh, techniques on our single instance base. And within the single instance, obviously an operating system can provide also their security. If you are using Windows Server, you know that there are also securities like a host based firewall is there, and username and password also can help you protect at the system operating system level. And within that system level, obviously applications, if you are having an application like you are using a database server or any other application, that can also have some security, that can has some security features that you can use to secure. So just think now. First, you are going to secure your outer layer. Next, you are going to secure your edge network, and then your virtual private networks. And within the virtual private network, there are also techniques for VPC, subnets, load balancer, instance-based operating system, and even at application level. So go for each and every one. Okay, next point is automate security best practices. By this, I mean to say that we should use some software-based security mechanisms. Those can improve security ability, and that can also be in a timely manner and cost effectively manner as well. So there are multiple tools that on the basis of some criteria can implement the security on our resources. Just like an example, in our AWS, we can implement security on the resources on the basis of tags. So we can create a policy, and that will look for a tag. If criteria matches, it will also implement a security on that one. And you have to protect your data as well. Okay, with your infrastructure, information security is also an important and critical thing. And to secure your data, there are two states data can be in that: data at rest, like on the storage, and data on the move, like it is being both of these. When data is on the storage, and you want to protect it, there are like encryption. You can encrypt your data. Even you can encrypt your drives as well nowadays. And you can also implement multi-factor authentications for that. Okay, and next thing is that keep people away from data. Obviously, by this mean we want to create mechanisms and tools to reduce or eliminate the need of direct access of manual processing of data. And this can also be useful. It will reduce the risk of loss and modification and human error when handling sensitive data. So every time you are going to secure your data or your environment, obviously it is good thing that you use some tools or scripts to secure them. And last but not least, prepare for security events. Prepare for an incident by having an incident management process that aligns to your organization requirement. And also run the incident response simultaneous, and use tools again with the automation to increase your speed detection, investigation, and recovery process. So these are some points if you are going to design your security. So always look for these principles. You have to go for each and every your asset, your information, and your system and services as well. Everything needs security. And in modern days, obviously there are multiple methods for each type of asset you can use. You can, for outer network, you can use your firewalls, you can use IPS, you can use IDS systems. Even for monitoring, there are SOC systems available. So there are a number of things that you can implement on your network. Okay, next thing is our security in the cloud is composed of 5 major areas. In AWS, if I show you, just let me show you. I've opened the console here, but let me open another tab. Okay, go to aws.amazon.com, and here we will go to products, and in the products, sorry, I think I scroll right down, and here you can see security, identity, and compliance, and you will click on that. Same thing, secure your workload and application in the cloud by protecting your data. Identity and access management by defining identity and access management. Protect your infrastructure and threat detection, and then continuous monitoring, compliance, and data privacy. So these major areas that are in securing the environment. And AWS security, again, these tools are available like Amazon Cognito, AWS Directory Services, AWS IAM, Identity and Access Management Tools, and AWS Resource Access Manager that can help you to secure identity. Same here. For detective controls, obviously you have tools like AWS Security Hub. So just let me jump back onto my slide. and I am actually talking about these areas. Okay, so Amazon has divided the security into these areas, and these tools for a specific area, and I will show you a demo of some of these just as we will move. Okay, so these are the major areas: identity and access management, detective controls, infrastructure protection, data protection, and then the incident report. So before we move on to this one, let me show you shared responsibilities model. AWS shared responsibility model enable organizations that adopt a cloud to achieve their security and compliance goals. Okay, in this model you can see all the underlying infrastructure, means the physical components of networking, their physical routers, switches, firewalls, gateways, storages, servers, hardware servers, and then the virtualization software is actually managed by AWS. If a customer is going with infrastructure as a service, okay, just let me zoom this up. Okay, so these things, if you are going in infrastructure as a service, so these things, the physical infrastructure is managed by AWS. AWS is responsible for their security, for their availability. So what you are managing, you are responsible for securing the operating system or EC2 instances that you are deploying on the infrastructure, any middleware, runtime applications, data, or any of these blocks. So you will be here in the blue blocks, and these are blocks you are responsible to manage the security and everything. Okay, so in the infrastructure as a service, when you deploy, AWS is responsible for managing the physical connectivity and infrastructure, but you are also responsible for managing your networking in the virtualized environment. Like you will create VPCs, and you will create your subnets, you will define security groups, and you are also will define ACLs, routing, NAT gateways. So these things, you will be the responsible person. If you go with a platform as a service, check out this one, the gray blocks. In the gray block, obviously you are having a little to manage and secure, whereas AWS is responsible for the most of the things. Okay, like a platform, you host a function as a service, or you host a web service like Beanstalk. So all the physical infrastructure plus the virtualized operating system, middleware, their update, their maintenance, and their scalability is obviously going to be managed by AWS. You will configure the application, its settings, and you will be responsible for the data. Okay, and in software as infrastructure, obviously you will be responsible for just managing or using your application directly, like in our O365, Microsoft Office 365. Microsoft is responsible for all physical infrastructure, their multi-tenancy or their operating system, maintenance of the base operating system, then load balancing, security, or means each and everything. Even the software, Office 365 is managed by Microsoft. So you will just configure some policies, you will define some application-based rules to use the software. So the same model, every cloud provider is working with this model. So just keep in mind, if you are using infrastructure, you are going to manage most of the things and like from your operating systems to application. And if you are using platform and software, these responsibilities will be transferred to cloud provider instead of you. So in identity and access management, identity and access management obviously look for two major things, that is handling the authentication, and the second thing is privilege management. So just to describe this more, let me move on to my console. Okay, this is my AWS Amazon. I will demonstrate the IAM so that we can define which users can access to this uh, environment, and to what extent they will be able to change the things and allow to use the resources. So there are two major areas you can see here. This is the beauty of AWS. They have categorized the things in a very simple manner, no complexity whatsoever, like on other platforms I have worked. There are number of things and a little bit complex environment than this one. So I like the beauty of simplicity of this AWS. So when you are deploying security, just directly jump into this one. Some of the governance features, obviously you have to check out here. Okay, when we are going to deploy the security, like I show you the different fields that where we are going to work. We will obviously manage our identity, then detective controls, infrastructure protection, data protections. So most of the things and tools are listed here that we will work with. So if I click on IAM, it will open up the console for IAM, where I can see a number of things. Dashboard obviously will give you a glance overview of overall structure in the IAM. First is saying welcome, then which link is used to access this console or environment, that is this one. Means if someone wants to connect this console, I will provide the same address, web address you can see here. I will provide the same address. He will just pop up the window and browser, put this address there, and it will be asked. Just like, let me open this one. Okay, let me open this into another browser. I will paste this address here. You can see. Okay, asking for user and password, means if someone wants to access my environment, he needs to provide username and password. This username and password is not the root username and password. If we want to sign in using root, here is the link, sign in using root user email. Okay, I will provide the user email address. It will change the screen a little bit. I'll provide the username email address, and then like here, I'll provide the username. We'll press next. It will ask the password, and then I will be able to sign in. So this one is the root. Who is the root? the user who created the account is automatically become the root of our environment. So for rest of users, they are considered as IAM users. So how we can delegate permissions, we can create multiple users. Obviously, this location is for that one. We for managing our user, securing this environment, we will create users. And if you want to change this address, you have option for customize. Okay, it will say that the current alias will be deleted, and you might not get this one again, and so I am not going to change this one. Just cancel it, but you can change this to customize. 5 users here, 8 groups. Within my IAM, I have a number of policies configured, roles, and identity providers. Okay. Your first thing is to secure your root user. When you are signed in, almost all these checkboxes are not green. You have to make them green. And how can you make them green? First of all, delete your root access keys. If you want to manage your AWS environment, there are 2 methods. This console, graphical user interface, and the second one is our command line interface. So when we connect using web interface, we provide a username and password, whereas by connecting, if we are connecting it by our CLI, we have to provide keys. And what will be those? Just like, let me show you. We have to provide these keys. Okay. Number 1, access key and secret access key. Okay, this will act as a username and this will act as password. So the first recommendation is to delete these keys so that nobody can access my environment from CLI. Next thing, we have to set a strong password. Okay, you can click here, set the strong password. Obviously, I'm not going deep in this one, just an overview so that you can secure your environment. Okay, the best practice is that you create some groups and apply permission and policies on that group and put your users in those groups. So if you have an account for AWS, obviously you should have a good look on groups, users, roles, policies, identity providers. Not only we can use this IAM, we can use multiple methods for users. Database like Active Directory, we can use the federated trust. So when you will deep dive into this one, obviously you can get a good overview of these things. But for now, I'm just closing this one and moving ahead because we have use your IAM. I have mentioned a number of IAM best practices policies. So create a user account for every individual. Means do not use a username and password for multiple persons. Create a user account for every individual and set the permissions. Apply strong password policy. Do not use simple passwords. And also rotate those passwords like on 30 days base policy. Use multi-factor authentication. AWS provides you multi-factor authentication, and you obviously, I think you should use this one. Use groups to manage your user accounts, permissions, to implement to implement permissions, you can say that you have to give this permission to the user so that they can perform only the selected or intended operations. You can also share some resources by using the permissions and roles again, and audit users activities. I will show you the tool where user activities are going to be stored so that you can also check out the activity logs there. And for root user, go and make all the checkboxes green as I show you on the console. Delete the keys, also use multi-factor authentication, and use strong passwords. So these are the things. Okay, move next. These are some tools I have written down that you will use for your IAM feature. These are available right under the console here, as described earlier. Security and these are IAM tools. Okay, let's move to the next slide. Next are the detective controls. Detective controls are used to identify a potential security threat or incident. These are an essential part of governance framework as well, and these can be used to support a quality process or a legal or compliance obligation, and for threat identification and response effort. Okay, so for detective controls, we can use a couple of approaches. We can capture and analyze logs, or we can also we can integrate these audit logs and controls with the notification and workflows. What are these things? Let me explain this thing. Okay, here are some tools that can be used to collect logs, and that can be used to manage threat detection services. They monitor the incoming and outgoing request continuously, and if there is any malicious or unauthorized behavior, obviously they will notify you with the help of notification service that you have configured in your AWS environment. Okay, CloudWatch is also used with the logs, and they can generate some alerts and can trigger some action as you have configured, and there are some services for our storage as well. Okay, just let me. Okay, when we are managing on-premises data center, if we just consider, sorry, if we consider capture and analyze log, in case of on-premise data center, we use some traditional on the data center to architecture, aggregate, and analyze logs typically require installation agents on the server. And then we carefully configure network appliances to direct log messages at the collection point. And from there, we collect the logs and send them to the rules agencies to check if there is any compliance or if there are any governance breakage, so that we can fix those things. So these things means are quite time-taking and obviously demands administrative effort. What are the benefits of using cloud-based, like in an AWS environment? Cloud-based environment, detective controls are used instead of manually updating an asset database and reconciling it with the real install base. you can obviously use some reliably gather asset metadata with just a few API calls. So, and this data will be far more accurate and timely than using discovery scans, manual entries into the configuration management database, or relying on agents that might stop reporting on their stay. So the second thing that you can use, there are multiple applications that are having native API driven services to collect, filter, and analyze logs instead of maintaining and scaling the logs backend yourself. And also these logs, they can be stored or directed to an object store like an S3 or a CloudWatch or any object. You can set a collector as well for this one. In AWS, a best practice is to customize delivery of AWS CloudTrail and other service-specific logging to capture API activity globally and centralize data for storage and analysis. Okay, so these two approaches are quite used. Let me show you the tool like CloudWatch logs. Okay, if we come right here under the management and governance, here is CloudWatch and CloudTrail as well. CloudTrail is like logging that stores the data. Okay, whereas CloudWatch is just like monitoring that monitors the runtime data. So this is the main difference, CloudTrail and in CloudWatch. Like you can see here, an event occurred on 20th 03/2020 at 10:39. Who initiated this route, and event name was create access keys, and you can check the details from here. Access keys, in which region, the event ID number given by AWS, the event name, and source means that this was event occurred in IAM part of this environment. Okay, so these were some information that you can get. And let me come back onto this one, and here is also CloudWatch. Okay, CloudWatch, what is does okay, it is actively monitoring your application or asset, and on the basis of defined criteria, it can trigger some event. Just like if I want to trace or I want to trigger an event, so what will I do? I can come into an alarm. Okay, I can create an alarm. On what basis alarm will trigger? We can select metric. There are predefined metrics here, 20 metrics in the billing. I think I have 17. Yeah, are in this usage. Okay, so I am going with usage by AWS resources. So these are some metrics. I like this metric. Okay, you can define the resource, the type, and you can define any user-friendly name for this metric, and can manage the thing and conditions here that if the metric value is greater than or greater than equals to, and what it will do, it will just say that if press next, it can use SNS service or email notification you can trigger on the basis of this condition. Okay, so we haven't configured any SNS or notification service. So here I'm going to just cancel this one. So these were two common tools that you can use for the detective controls. And in infrastructure protection, actually infrastructure, obviously, I have shown you different models. Just hopping back to my shared responsibility model, you can see there is infrastructure as a service, platform as a service, and software as a service. So we are just discussing about infrastructure as a service. So infrastructure protection, what includes in infrastructure? Obviously, your machines, your appliances like load balancers and storages. So these include all devices in your infrastructure. Infrastructure protection is obviously a key part of an information security program. It ensures that system and services within your workload are protected against any unintended and unauthorized access and potential vulnerabilities. Okay, for example, you will secure your infrastructure by defining some trust boundaries. What are the trust boundaries? Trust boundaries include like network boundaries, that who or which type of traffic can come into or can go out to your network by defining some packet filtration facilities. You can also define some security, system level security configurations and maintenance. For example, you define some patch management softwares or management systems so that they maintain your servers, update your devices, and also you can set the operating system level authentication and authorization and other appropriate policies uh, for your uh, enforcement point, like you can have a web application firewall or API gateways. So you use these things, trust boundaries and system configuration maintenance, operating system authentications, and policy enforcement points to protect your your infrastructure protection that you created. You can have multiple approaches. You you can come if you want to protect your infrastructure. Actually, I should say that you have to protect your network, you have to protect your host, and you have to protect your operating systems. So these three major categories we can say we can define into. So protecting network and host level boundaries. So how can we do this? There are a number of tools by which we can use this one. Just let me show you the screen. If we want to protect our network, there are security groups and the network access control list we can use. Also, AWS Shield is available that manages distributed DDoS attack and protect your network. And also web application firewall for your web application based uh, services, and firewall manager. Just let me show you a simple tool here. Going back into my services, let me open, and I will come into VPC. In VPC, here are security and network access list and security groups. Network access list are used to secure your networks. Security groups are used to protect your instances. Okay, like in network access list, what's in this one? I can define inbound rule and outbound rules. Like here is a rule. This one is a value, just we can say this is sequence number 100. All traffic of any type, any protocol, any port range from any source is allowed. Okay, we can edit these inbound rules, and obviously we can restrict uh, the specific type of traffic from a specific type of source. Okay, so network ACLs are related to our network inbound and outbound traffic filtration, whereas security groups, okay, this one is my security groups, and in the outbound rules there is no column for IP scheme, means it is only requiring port or protocols. Okay, so we will implement this on our EC2 instances. So these are the two things or two tools that are used. Let me jump back to my slides. Okay, there are other tools also available here. You can go through and check out these tools yourself, that how can we implement and secure our resources by using these one. Just like you can see that we have a security hub, then AWS Firewall Manager, WAF and Shield. So you can use these tools from here, right? Okay, next is the data protection. Data, your information in the form of files, and how you are going to protect these. Before you think of protecting these files, you have to actually go with the one of many approaches. Like you have to classify your data. You have to uh, think that data you are going to protect will be on transit, or it will be at rest. And there are multiple techniques to secure data by using backup, replication, and recovery features. So the first thing, if you use the classification feature, you will define the classification, like this is a confidential data, or this is private data, or this is public data. On the basis of these classification, obviously you define securities. For public data, obviously you will use loose securities so that multiple users can access that one. Whereas in a confidential type of data, you will not only implement securities, you will encrypt that data. You can use multiple layers of security to protect that data. So classification, then you can encrypt your data at rest, at transit, at rest. Like if we are storing our data in AWS infrastructure for object-based storage, that is S3, and for block-based storage, that is our EBS, elastic block storage, we can encrypt data over there. And protecting data on transit, for example, we have a data center on-premise and want to transfer data on the cloud, AWS cloud, where we have another data center, and we are working in a hybrid environment. We will use VPN so that any traffic that is intended to move in between our data centers, it should be encrypted by using VPN protocols like IPsec protocol, or which type of protocol we are going to use. It will obviously going to protect our data. And for any disaster, we can use data backup. Also, we can see the disaster level or disaster range. For example, disaster could occur on a device-based, disaster could be on a complete data center. So replication will help us to protect our data like a complete data center or region base disaster, replication will move the data from one region to another region, and obviously recovery will help us to get that lost data back again. For these things, there are some tools, and I will show you some of those on the cloud. Okay, here is my simple storage, and have just opened it, and this is my Amazon S3. Okay, here I have bucket just created, I think half an hour ago. This one, users can store their data here, and that is data on rest. And if this data is critical and we want to secure this, we can implement encryption on this one by clicking default. By default, encryption is none. You can implement AES 256 or the keys, providing the keys. These keys are provided by AWS, and you can also provide customer keys, server-based keys and customer keys. So if the customer is having their own keys, they don't want to use AWS provided keys, they can provide their keys as well on their data. Just jump back into our console here again. Also, if you are creating your EC2 instance, just let me give you a quick walkthrough from here. I'm going to create an EC2 instance. With an EC2 instance, I have a block-based storage on Linux with a machine. Press next, and you can see here we can encrypt our entire block-based storage as well. So there are security methods that we can use to secure our data as well. And here are also, you can see backup and recovery feature is available. AWS backup is also here. And we can use our S3 replication. Management, we can enable the replication, and this replication is cross-region replication or same region replication. Okay, everything will be charged, means if you are moving it to cross-region, so always keep in mind that AWS might charge you for any service that you are requesting for. And just keep one thing in mind, that security and performance are just inversely proportional to each other. If you are increasing security, obviously you are decreasing the performance, because the mechanism algorithms that are going to be used to encrypt or secure data, while opening or accessing those things, they will have to convert it back to human understandable. So the conversion can take time. So just keep in mind, and always keep balancing between performance and security. Okay, just move back. Yeah. Okay, then the incident reporting, the final of all. And in the incident reporting, obviously tools I have shown you, like Cloud Watch, Cloud Trail, that are used for to collect the information of any incident, and on the basis of those information, we can define an action for the particular type of incident. So what is incident response? Incident maintaining situational awareness is one of the most important principles. Okay, even with the extremely mature preventative and detective controls, your organization should still put processes in place to respond and mitigate the potential impact of security incidents. Okay, the architecture of your workload strongly affect the ability of your team to operate effectively during an incident, to isolate or contain system, and to restore operations to a known good state. Okay, these are things putting in a place the tools and the access ahead of security incident, then routinely uh, participating incident, practicing incident response through the different channels. Okay, AWS has a different number of approaches we can use, and there are a number of tools that we can use for collecting the information, as I told you in the next slide. Obviously, CloudTrail, CloudWatch, and step functions can be used to collect the information and to respond to any incident that occur in your infrastructure or environment.